Okay, so this is fun. I've got a question for my American friends. How does a $1,000 PS5 Pro sound? Or maybe even a $400 Switch? And I guess if you're Nintendo, you're going to be a little bit more spooked about the Switch too. Now, those are not numbers that I have pulled out of some nether region, at least one on me. No, those are from the worst case predictions of the American Consumer Technology Association. We like games, we would like to buy games, and that's kind of spooky. And you know what's real funny? George Lucas, once again, is right. How wrong we were when we eye-rolled at the Phantom Menace's trade negotiations. Just this time, right? It's not corporate greed, it's not price hikes to cover failing products. No, this is the potential impact of the trade war on gaming. Now, we did see a little bit of that last time we went through this fun period. It's a little more spicy now. And once we actually get into the details, that's where things are different to last time, because beyond the obvious price increases to, say, GPUs or consoles, there's a hidden cost, and that hidden cost is the rapid decline of the physical games market. That's a decline that the big publishers, well, you know, the big console people absolutely want to happen. But for a lot of us, those discs represent ownership, they represent freedom. And this will be bad for those discs. Now, it's not all doom. I'll be able to share how some companies have at least taken steps to try and avoid the worst impacts on your wallet. But that's in the here and now. And big picture, a lot of troubling trends are actually set to accelerate. Now, because you're watching this, I know you want to actually know how the world works, and what we can do is break you free from doom scrolling with just using a few minutes of Brilliant every day. They're today's sponsor, they're awesome, and they're not just another learning platform, they are hands-on problem solving that does not feel like studying. Have you ever wondered, say, how Airbnb owners decide where to buy properties, right? Well, Brilliant has got you analyzing real data basically to try and find the best neighborhoods, while also teaching you how data visualization works. So no matter what you think about that topic, actually knowing how it works really helps you navigate the world. And that's just one example. From maths to data science to computer science, Brilliant teaches you the frameworks that actually stick. It's not about memorization, it's not about theory without context, it is practical knowledge that works. And the education system that I went through basically sucked at all of this stuff. It gave learning a bad rap, and that is why I love Brilliant's mission. Their site is great, but I've got to say their app is absolutely killer. Just a few minutes a day, and yeah, you'll have fun. You'll learn cool stuff. And if you visit brilliant.org/Bellular News or click the link down below, you'll get 30 days for free and 20% off an annual premium subscription. So big thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring the video. Let's go. All right, so the big picture is the USA, China, Canada, and Mexico are all locked in a standoff over implementing trade tariffs. And this is a damn volatile situation. Like, literally since we first wrote up this script, there have been more tariffs. It really is fun. Now, the core principle, right, is that a tariff is a tax that is charged on imports from an affected country. So imagine a GPU that is manufactured in China. In order to import that from China to the United States, the company doing the importing will have to pay an extra 20% tariff, right? And to be very clear here, because I have seen a lot of confusion over this, that's the company buying it into the USA that pays the tariff, not the company in China who manufactured the GPU, right? So big picture, the point here is to make foreign-made goods more expensive for you to purchase in your local region, because whoever is buying those goods in to sell to you has got to pay a 20% tariff, for example. The whole point is that's more expensive so that you will buy local, which in this case would mean you're buying America-made computer hardware, consoles, and physical games. But the problem is, those aren't really a thing. And this stuff's not all a theory. We've actually seen the impact of this already. The first impact was felt on GPUs. So the RTX 50 cards, right, that whole series, they went up in price because of these tariffs. The retailer Newegg basically confirmed as much in a tweet, tweets that they've now deleted, which is a bit weird, and they later told Tom's Hardware that the increases were, quote, due to a number of factors that are unfortunately out of our control. Which to me does read tariffs. But there are other things. I mean, the GPU market is pretty damn volatile and chaotic. Nvidia didn't ship enough cards anyway, a lot of accusations of paper launches, so this whole fluctuation in GPU prices kind of passed under the radar, because basically we're all kind of pissed at Nvidia. Now, even if GPUs were previously exempt from tariffs until now, no one is really surprised by expensive GPUs in the current market. So GPUs, expensive, not really a surprise. But the worst impact on your wallet could very much be yet to come. So here's the deal. Manufacturers were allegedly stockpiling newly produced GPUs before the new year, right? With anything that was already in the US exempt from these tariffs because it had already been imported, it was in a US warehouse. And that means that anything newly produced and then imported would be subject to the tariffs, and that would increase the consumer prices even further. So that kind of sucks. But for gaming especially, it also sucks, right? And not just for PC players. So that group that I mentioned, the Consumer Trade Association, they estimated these tariffs could cost US consumers $7 billion more for consoles. Just quite a few dollars. Now, the impact here, right? It's more than just your wallet. It is going to go across the industry, almost every aspect of it. Right now, okay? There is no evidence to suggest that digital products are going to be impacted by these tariffs. And that's because there are various trade agreements that are in place to protect digital goods. Now, that does depend on everyone honoring those agreements. Maybe they won't, but let's assume they will. Let's assume digital will be fine, because we got to talk about what we know would not be fine, and that's physical games. Before doing this story and one previously, I had no idea about this. So, do you know where the majority of American game discs come from? The answer is Mexico. So, that's basically where they are manufactured. And that means that if the Mexican tariffs continue, publisher costs for making physical games will increase. Now, there is some good news here, right? The estimates are suggesting that this would be just under $1 per disc. Now, yeah, that's millions of dollars across millions of discs. It's not huge, but it's also not the whole story. And this is where I'm going to cut to an analyst, Matt Piscatella. He's been in the analyst biz for like 20 plus years, bit of a legend, works for Circana, and he predicts one of two outcomes from this, right? His first prediction, publishers can increase the cost of physical games and also of digital games to ensure price parity. That would be them passing the cost onto your wallet, but then of course making it, fair, and increasing the price of the digital games to match. Of course, those digital games not being impacted by the tariffs. So that would be a sneaky business if they did choose to do it. The other thing they could do, though, is also not really good, because it's just choosing not to produce physical discs at all. Now, they could sell the latter as a consumer good, basically saying, look, we need price parity between them. We're not going to do these physical things anymore. We're going to protect prices for the 60% of the market who are playing digital games. They could probably write up a press release selling that as a good thing. Now, even if the tariffs keep being delayed, right? Because we don't know if this will ultimately end up coming to pass. What we do know for sure, though, is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is bad for business. Uncertainty can also be an excuse. There's a lot of companies doing layoffs and various things based on these tariffs, even though they don't know if the tariffs are actually coming. And it will often seem like, well, the uncertainty of tariffs is just an excuse to do layoffs that some companies plan to do anyway. As for this, though, why would you commission several million discs for a game releasing in 3 months if you've got no idea how much they'll end up costing in the end? But of course, it's not just that. It's also the consoles that play those discs. And you know it is serious when Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all decide to band together as friends. Now, that's what they did in 2019, whenever these tariffs were proposed, right? They basically banded together and they warned that a 25% price increase would mean that a games console would be, quote, out of reach for holiday spending, that consumers would have to spend $840 million more on their Christmas consoles. And because they did that in 2019, they got themselves an exception. In 2025, they have not got an exception. And of course, there's a big problem if you're Nintendo and you've got a Switch 2 coming. I mean, yeah, it would suck for Xbox and PlayStation, but, if Nintendo got disproportionately impacted, I'm sure they wouldn't be that sad. Because, of course, their follow-ups, right? The next generation, that's, well, still going to be a few years. And being real with you, it is the span of the next few years that actually matters. I'm pretty sure you've noticed there's a little bit of a, recalibration of the whole game board, right? In terms of the world politics, multipolarity, all those fun things that are totally out of the scope of this channel. But suffice to say, shit is changing. And now these businesses are trying to work out how they basically survive and how to not price themselves out of the market. And they've been doing that for the last 5 years because they have seen this on the horizon. All three have moved some of their production outside of China. But even with that, the US is still an absolutely huge import market. This was pointed out by Daniel Ahmad of Nico Partners that post-2019, US imports for Chinese products were reduced in real shipping terms. But, right? Console imports remained above 75% of the market. So that actually means that console imports are still pretty damn exposed to all of this risk. And it does make sense. Like, rebuilding a whole infrastructure to build all those consoles will take time and money. And that's a lot of work to build a parallel production line. That's going to take time. That's going to take money that will be passed down to us. And of course, as the first to launch, Nintendo has likely made the biggest move here. David Gibson, another analyst, pointed out that after 2019, Nintendo started on a plan to basically do as much maneuvering as they could to move 50% of their production to other regions. A big example is, say, Vietnam, and it does seem like Vietnam is a real beneficiary of, well, companies just moving their manufacturing elsewhere. The plan basically being they're still going to make a shitload of consoles in China, it's just they'll go to other places and the Vietnam consoles will go to America. But that will not mean there is no impact on your wallet, because the cost of moving your whole production, well, that will have to be recouped somewhere. Let's talk worst case scenarios, and to be honest with you, right? There's some spooky shit to come, but it's actually on top of shit that's already real spooky. If you've watched all of our videos, you may know this, but the TLDR, right, is that when you actually adjust for inflation, premium console spending has been remarkably flat over the years, right? Last year, 2024, actually saw a sales decline. So the vibes have not been good, right, in basically the games industry. And this could, well, change things a bit. So if these tariffs continue, estimates are that console sales will drop by 57% at worst. Bear in mind, they were already kind of low in the last few years, and the Consumer Trade Association thinks that it will get worse. And yeah, I mean, you've got Sony basically keeping par with the PS4 generation, with the PS5 generation. I believe they may have slightly outpaced it, but Microsoft is behind. So it does seem that those console sales basically are on the downtrend anyway. Now, if you start slapping on 10, 20, 25%, right, of an upcharge, well, shit, those console sales are going to go down even more. And even if that stuff doesn't happen, the risk, the uncertainty will impact how much it costs to do things, right? And that means it will be passed down to you. I mean, a luxury good like a new console or a GPU is already something that you really think about before buying, that you've got to justify. And that is harder if you have 20% more cost. You're not alone if that is your feeling. There's analysts, one example, Joost van Dreden, maybe that's his name. I tried. Anyway, he suggests that even with the best possible outcome, right? And, a new generation of console spiking interests, that console sales would be dropping again as we approach 2030. I suppose that would be the GTA 6 sales bubble finally going away and us realizing, I don't know, gaming's dead. So, in the worst case, this actually could be building up to be the weakest games market in a decade. What happens to the games industry as a whole in this worst case scenario? Well, physical games would slide further and further into obsolescence. If you care about preservation, that's not good. If you want to be an absolute bandit and borrow a game from your friend instead of downloading it again, or, buying it, rip that, obviously. PCs and laptops would be far more expensive under these tariffs, so they would not escape fully. But the PC market actually might be uniquely more resilient because you can use your PC for more than just what a games console does. And that means if you are going to be spending a bunch of money doing that on your PC, well, that's probably where it's going to go, over something like a console. Now, that is, of course, if audiences don't just switch to, phones and tablets, which would be sad. Or maybe settle on, streaming platforms like, GeForce Now and stuff. Kind of hard to say. Digital spending for PC would likely continue to grow, basically, but that doesn't necessarily mean more games. And if it's anything like the trends that have dominated the last few years, it'll basically go like this. Less full-priced premium game sales because people have got to be a bit more smart with their money in an economic pinch. Less next-generation games as developers basically stay with a far larger audience. They stick to what they're doing. You'll see more free-to-play games that have got a lower barrier to entry and more microtransactions to monetize that audience, and probably more microtransactions that are geared to be hyper-premium. Because the thing about money is, it all actually does have to go somewhere, right? And as wealth inequality, changes, well, why do you think that Riot are doing $250 skins for League of Legends? Because, motherfuckers buy them. Because they've got a lot of money. Money that maybe you don't have. I'm now going to try to do something real dangerous, making predictions. But I actually think I'm going somewhere with this, right? So, when, say, an animal is backed into a corner, it's going to fight for its life. If a mother thinks that the baby is under threat, it's going to just be so much more, powerful, aggressive, whatever. Well, whenever our games companies are a bit backed into a corner, they may be facing some systemic decline, How are they going to get more money? Well, I think I know, actually. I think we're going to see the growth of in-game advertising. We recently talked about it in a video that was really focused on Steam's policies, but if you watch that video, you'll know it wasn't just about Steam. It was about product placement, stuff that we see in, say, well, you know, the Kojima production games as one example. And there's pressure, and this pressure does not necessarily have to come from within the games companies. EA's shareholders were the ones asking Andrew Wilson about ads, because to a game publisher, free money's free money. You've got eyeballs, why don't you show an ad and monetize those eyeballs? And as we covered in the Steam video, there's loads of ways you can get around Steam's policy. And while lots of this could be driven by American companies dealing with American problems, well, if ads are coming, that'll come to you. That means that regardless of where you are, you will be paying for the trade war. If American spending decreases, those costs have got to be recouped somewhere else. It's all part of a global network that is under pressure, right? That money has got to come from somewhere. And if you want to see the way that pressure makes games leadership make really bad calls, I think you should watch this video next.